Hey there, I'm new to the Souls franchise, as you can probably tell by this, and all of this. It seems like everyone in the entire gaming world is playing Elden Ring right now. YouTubers who normally make Nintendo content are playing Elden Ring. Streamers who normally play Warzone or first-person shooters also playing Elden Ring. My grandmother is playing Elden Ring. It's not hard to figure out why this is the case. The week before this game came out, the internet was completely flooded with rave reviews for this game. It was rare to find any site with a score lower than 10 out of 10. Everyone was comparing it back to Breath of the Wild and how revolutionary that game was at the time of its release. It's not often that a video game or even a movie receives such universal praise, so naturally, everybody hopped on the hype train, including me. You see, here's the thing about Elden Ring. As objectively good as it is, it's not the type of game that its wide-ranging audience is used to. I've spent around 20 hours in this game so far, and I've loved every single second of it, even the ones where I'm on the receiving end of a brutal death blow from a boss. But Fromsoft games, also referred to as Souls games, are notoriously difficult challenges, and many casual gamers don't even have the chops to make it past the first boss in most of these titles, without a little bit, or a lot of it, of help. Elden Ring is no exception to this rule. The combat system is unforgivingly difficult, and there are so many ways to strategically approach the game that it's definitely possible to feel sort of lost when you're just starting out, especially if you're like me and you haven't played all the way through any of the previous Souls games. As a first-time Souls player who's been stumbling and bumbling through this game for the past couple of weeks, I think I've found my footing just enough to put together a little list of things I wish I knew or understood before starting out in Elden Ring. First off, I wish I fully understood the implications of the initial class you choose to be a part of at the outset of the game. All of your options are laid out for you with some brief descriptions of what they can do and what their base stats are. But if you're a first-time player who does not understand the battle system all that well yet, the information available doesn't really mean a whole lot since you have no real concept of how any of these stats and starting weapons will actually help you in the early game battles. For example, I chose to start with the Vagabond class, which is sort of like your typical knight in shining armor with a sword and shield. It has relatively balanced stats, leaning slightly in favor of your character's ability to fight up close with enemies. 20 hours into the game, I've managed to build out a pretty balanced fighter with both melee and sorcery abilities, but in the early game, I didn't have any range whatsoever. There were some early game enemies that I would have preferred to be able to fight from a distance, and that's not really an option for a Vagabond early in the game, especially if you're playing blind and don't know where to find everything you need to expand your arsenal quite yet. If I wanted to start out with a bow and arrow, or the ability to use incantations or use sorcery, I would have had to pick either the Bandit, who starts with the bow and arrow, or the Astrologer, who starts with magic. It's not like you can't learn magic or buy a bow and arrow as the Vagabond. I eventually did figure out how to cast incantations with my character, but early in the game, before you've leveled up and your character's stats are more suited for a specific type of combat, it can make some enemies tougher if you unknowingly chose a starting build that doesn't quite match the playstyle you feel yourself naturally gravitating towards. In the early game, I got completely rinsed trying to slash enemies with my sword in some situations where I probably would have won handily with magic, but that was just me realizing I might have been better off as an astrologer. So my piece of advice before starting the game is to think carefully about how you think you want to play the early game, but also keep in mind that you can always level up the aspects of your character that you feel are lacking, regardless of the build you chose to start with. Second, right when you start the game, there is in fact a short tutorial dungeon. I know, some of you will be like, no shit, but hear me out on this one. After you play through the obligatory first death to a boss sequence when you jump into the game, it sends you to a cave called the Stranded Graveyard. The thing is, when you spawn in, it seems like the obvious path is to head straight for the door up the stairs that are directly in front of you. This leads outside to the open world where the real game truly begins. However, if you drop down into the hole directly to your right when you spawn into this cave, you'll instead find a short tutorial dungeon that helps you nail the basics of the game, which is definitely helpful for first-time Souls players. The reason I'm including this in this video is because when I first dropped into the game, I completely missed the tutorial, which wasn't detrimental by any means to my survival, but it did take about an hour or two before I figured out that my character can sprint. When I came back to this area later in the game, I did realize that there's literally a message on the ground pointing you directly into the Cave of Knowledge. And there's literally an NPC who tells you to take the plunge of learning and remembrance. Am I a colossal f***ing idiot for missing this? Probably, but you don't have to be like me. Don't miss the tutorial. The third thing is the importance of where you allocate your early level up stats, and also understanding what each of the stats truly mean. This aspect of the game will come a lot more naturally to Souls veterans and players who have worked with similar systems in other games, but for the rookies in the room, it's important to take those early level ups seriously, because as you level up and the level ups become fewer and far between because of the increased rune count you need per level up, you don't want to find yourself with a stat spread where you wish you had more health or wish you had more strength, but you know your next level up won't be for a little while. I would say that for first timers, those first few level ups will almost always be well spent on Vigor, which is your health, the red bar, and Endurance, which is the green bar, because those are literally the two stats that will keep your character alive. It's hard to overstate how big of a difference it makes to have the extra health it takes to be able to tank an extra hit or two from the early game bosses, rather than just always being a one-shot kill because you only leveled up your strength. Endurance is helpful too, because running out of it on the battlefield will keep you from roll dodging away from that death blow, or getting in those extra crucial swipes with your sword to take down a boss. Once you have these leveled up a little bit, then it'll be time to branch out and work on some of the other stats more specific to your approach. Magic users will lean more into faith and intelligence, whereas brawlers will move towards strength and dexterity. You may even choose to go for a balance of all of them, but at the end of the day, what matters in the early game for first-time players is making sure you can survive those early game battles. You don't want to get so frustrated with the difficulty of the game early on and then give up on it just because you didn't upgrade your stats properly. This fourth one doesn't have that much to do with the gameplay, but it's still worth mentioning because I was surprised when I came across it, but the edits you initially make to your character's design don't necessarily have to be permanent. If you're like me and are very particular about how your character looks in a video game, then you may find yourself getting caught up for a pretty long time in the initial character design menu trying to figure out the best way to edit every single customizable option, and there are a lot of characteristics you can tweak on your Elden Ring character. If you're as indecisive as I am about certain small aspects of your character, or if you're just not sure if you want to design your character to look like either Shrek or Kanye, then fret not, because you can easily just redo your entire appearance whenever you feel like it as soon as you gain access to the round table hold. If you head into the back room behind where the blacksmith works, you'll see a mirror in the back right corner of the room. If you walk up to it and interact with it, you'll be given the chance to edit the appearance of your character. Easy. You can even save your current appearance as a template, so if you only want to change your appearance temporarily, or you decide that you want to revert back to your old appearance at a certain point, it makes it easier than just having to waste your time messing around with all the different sliders. I know this isn't the most critical item on the list, but maybe it could save someone 30 minutes or so of their time at the outset of the game. The fifth and final thing I wish I knew before starting Elden Ring, and this is a really stupid one, is that I wish I knew that the messages that players leave all throughout the lands between are lies over half the time. Maybe I'm just extra gullible because I'm new to Soulsborne games, but when a random stranger on the internet tells me to attack a wall for a hidden passage, I'm gonna try it. You never know, right? I've seen weirder stuff work out in video games before. Usually I just end up swinging my sword at a brick wall like an idiot, or better yet, jumping straight off a cliff to my death when a message tells me to try jumping. Not every message is useless though. Sometimes people will leave helpful little pieces of advice before different boss battles. Some of them have even helped me to formulate my approach that led to me eventually beating the boss, so don't disregard all of the messages, just the ones that are in the really obviously offbeat locations. And there you have it. Hopefully this list helps you get off to a smoother start in Elden Ring than I did, or hopefully, if you've been playing the game, you agree with some of the things I have to say. Let me know in the comments below any extra Elden Ring advice you might have. As of the recording of this video, I just beat Godric the Grafted and I'm about to make my way into the second area of the game, so there's still a lot of Elden Ring left for me to experience. I'll wait to share a full opinion on this game until I've managed to complete everything, but as far as I can tell so far, it's probably deserving of those rave reviews it's getting. I would hate for other Souls game newcomers to miss out on a potentially 10 out of 10 experience just because they have too much trouble with the early game, so That's part of the reason I made this video. Now that the fellow tarnished hath watcheth my Elden Ring video, thou shalt slasheth the like button and thou subscribe to the channel. Yeah.